In a residential neighborhood in Denver, Colorado, where autumn evenings were growing shorter, Lisa Thompson was hurrying home from the library. She worked as a part-time librarian at a small community library. Today, too, after finishing story time for the children, she was rushing home to prepare dinner for her family. The apartment building where Lisa lived wasn't luxurious, but it was in a clean and safe middle-class neighborhood. It was a 3-story red brick building with 4 units on each floor. The Thompson family lived in a corner unit on the second floor, with windows overlooking a small courtyard and the trees of a nearby park. Lisa loved this place. It was quiet and an ideal environment for her daughter Emma to grow up in. Her husband Michael worked as a construction supervisor at a mid-sized local construction company. Married for 16 years, he was a serious and responsible man. He left early in the morning, always came home in the evening, and cherished the time he spent with his family on weekends. Recently, overtime had increased due to a housing construction boom, but he never complained, saying it was for the family. Lisa was proud of her husband's dedicated work ethic. Their daughter Emma was a 14-year-old 8th grader who had grown into a beautiful girl with chestnut hair inherited from her mother and gentle brown eyes from her father. While she had moments of teenage rebellion, her relationship with Lisa was good, and she often told her mother about school events and friends. Emma loved reading and frequently visited the library where her mother worked to borrow new novels. She said she wanted to study literature in the future, and Lisa wholeheartedly supported her daughter's aspirations. Margaret Wilson, who lived next door to the Thompson family, had been widowed for 10 years. She was a former high school English teacher who, after retirement, lived quietly alone in her apartment. For Margaret, who had no children, the Thompson family was special. She had been warmly watching over them since they moved in 8 years ago. Margaret was particularly fond of Emma, helping with homework and inviting her to dinner when Lisa was busy. Emma also loved Aunt Margaret, as she called her, often visiting her room after school to drink tea and talk about books. For Lisa, Margaret was like a mother figure. Since her own parents lived far away in California, whenever she had troubles with child-rearing or small marital concerns, she always consulted Margaret. On autumn evenings when Lisa returned from the library, she often saw Emma with Margaret in the apartment courtyard. They would tend to the flower beds or sit on benches talking. Whenever she saw such scenes, Lisa felt warmth in her heart. Here was a rare thing in urban areas, a true neighborly relationship across generations. Michael also adored Margaret. On weekends, he helped with small repairs in her room and carried heavy packages for her. Margaret often said, "Having a family like yours next door makes me truly happy." And she would smile, saying, "Seeing such a wonderful family makes me feel happy too." The Thompson family's life wasn't glamorous, but it was filled with love. With Lisa's part-time income and Michael's salary, their life was stable. On weekends, they would go to the park as a family or see movies. In summer, they enjoyed camping at a nearby lake, and in winter, they went skiing. It was ordinary but fulfilling daily life. Lisa sometimes wished this peaceful life would continue forever. She treasured above all else the situation where her family was healthy, loving each other, and supporting one another. Saturday morning began as usual with the aroma of Lisa's pancakes. From the kitchen came the sound of butter sizzling and the pleasant sound of the coffee maker. Emma appeared at the dining table in her pajamas with bedhead. "Good morning, Mom." "Good morning, Emma. Did you sleep well?" Lisa placed pancakes with maple syrup in front of her daughter. Emma nodded slightly while picking up her fork. However, this morning she wasn't touching the pancakes that the growing girl usually ate with delight. "What's wrong?" "No appetite." "No, I'm fine. Just a little sleepy." There was a shadow of worry in Emma's expression. Lisa was concerned but tried to understand her teenage daughter's complex emotions. She was probably worrying about friendships at school or tests. Michael had already left for the work site. Recently, he often went to work on Saturdays too. While Lisa understood that he was busy due to the housing construction boom, she felt a little lonely that family time was decreasing. How about we go shopping today? We need to prepare for the new school term, and let's take our time going around the shopping mall together for the first time in a while. Emma's face brightened a little. That sounds good. I wanted a new notebook. The two left home around 1 in the afternoon. Cherry Creek Shopping Center in downtown Denver was about a 30-minute drive away. While driving, Lisa tried to enjoy conversation with her daughter. How's school? Have you gotten used to the new teachers? Yes, more or less. Mrs. Miller, the English teacher, is strict but gives interesting classes. That's good. Since Aunt Margaret was also an English teacher, why don't you consult with her sometime? Emma answered while looking out the window. Yes. Aunt Margaret sometimes has a worried look on her face lately. Really? I hadn't noticed. Mom, you're too busy to see what's happening around you. There was a slight edge to Emma's words. Lisa was startled. Indeed, recently, caught up in work and housework, she might have overlooked small changes in her family and neighbors. When they arrived at the shopping mall, it was bustling with many families, as was typical for a Saturday afternoon. Lisa and Emma started with the stationery store. As Emma chose new notebooks and colored pencils, her expression gradually brightened. This notebook is cute, isn't it? I like the cat drawing on the cover. It's lovely. A very Emma-like choice. Next, they went around clothing stores. While Emma was changing clothes in the fitting room, Lisa's cell phone rang. It was a message from Michael, going to be late today. Go ahead and have dinner without me. Lisa frowned slightly. Recently, such messages had been increasing. Of course, she understood that work was busy, but it was disappointing not to have family time on weekends. A message from Dad. Emma, coming out of the fitting room, asked, seeing her mother's expression. Yes, he's going to be late today too. Emma's expression clouded. Again. Dad hasn't been home much lately. He's busy with work. He's working hard for us. But... Emma started to say something but then closed her mouth. But what? Nothing. Lisa was concerned about her daughter's behavior but didn't press further. She judged that it wasn't wise to force out the complex emotions of adolescence. The two decided to take a break in the food court. Emma ordered pizza, and Lisa ordered a salad. The Saturday afternoon food court was bustling with people of various ages. Families with children, young couples, middle and high school students with friends. Everyone seemed to be having a good time. Emma, if you have any worries, don't hesitate to talk about them. Mom is always on your side. Emma took a bite of pizza and then slowly opened her mouth. Mom, aren't you worried about Dad? About Dad? What do you mean? Recently, his voice is different when he's talking on the phone. Sometimes he talks in a scary voice. Lisa was surprised. A scary voice? What kind? I don't really know, but it's completely different from Dad's usual voice. Also, when I woke up in the middle of the night, I saw Dad talking to someone on the phone in the living room. He looked very tired. Anxiety flashed through Lisa's mind. Was Michael hiding something? However, in 16 years of marriage, her husband had always been honest and sincere. It was probably due to work stress. Your father is a very responsible person, so he might be worrying about various work matters. But it's okay, Mom will talk to him properly. Emma showed a relieved expression, but she still didn't seem completely convinced. Around 5 in the afternoon, the two finished shopping and headed home. In the car, Emma seemed sleepy but occasionally sighed deeply. While driving, Lisa was reflecting on her daughter's words. Were there things about Michael's behavior that should have concerned her? Certainly, Her husband seemed more tired than before recently. He was often absent-minded during meals, and he went to work on weekends more frequently. However, she had thought it was due to the busyness of the construction industry. She had never even considered that there might be other serious problems. "Mom, I had fun today." "Thank you," Emma said in a sleepy voice. "Thank you too. It was good to spend time together leisurely for the first time in a while." However, in Lisa's heart, a small seed of anxiety planted by her daughter's words had begun to sprout. When she got home, she would talk to Michael slowly. It was probably nothing, but communication between spouses was important. Just before 6 in the evening, the two arrived at their apartment building. They parked in the parking lot and headed toward the building carrying shopping bags. As usual, warm light was leaking from Margaret's room window. She was probably reading while drinking tea. Lisa was talking about the day's shopping with her daughter as they climbed the stairs. However, when they reached the second floor, she felt something strange in the atmosphere. The hallway was quieter than usual, and there was somehow a tense air. The moment Lisa and Emma tried to insert the key into their door, the door to Margaret's room next door opened forcefully. Margaret burst out, but her expression was more desperate than they had ever seen. Her usually neat gray hair was disheveled, her face was pale, and her hands were trembling slightly. "Lisa." "Emma." Margaret's voice was completely different from her usual calm tone, filled with urgency. She spread her hands as if to block the two from moving forward. "Please, don't go inside." Margaret's words were spoken in a whisper-like small voice, but they contained earnest pleading. Lisa almost dropped her shopping bag, confused. "Margaret, what's wrong? What happened?" "In your room." Margaret choked on her words. "There are scary men inside. 2 men are waiting for you to come home." Emma clung to Lisa's arm. "Mom, I'm scared." Lisa's heart began beating violently. "What do you mean? Since when?" "About an hour ago. I was looking at the courtyard from my window. Then an unfamiliar black car stopped in the parking lot, and 2 men got out. They were doing something in front of your door. And then," Margaret continued with a trembling voice, "they opened the lock and went inside. At first, I thought Michael had come home and brought friends, but their behavior was strange. They were very aggressive, and their voices were rough." Lisa tried to take out her cell phone, but her hands were shaking so much she couldn't operate it properly. Reality felt thin, as if she were having a bad dream. She couldn't believe such a thing could happen to their peaceful life. "I'll try calling Michael." Lisa called her husband's number, but the phone just kept ringing without an answer. She tried calling back 2, 3 times, but got the same result. "Mom, is Dad okay?" Emma's voice was tearful. Lisa held her daughter close while trying to stay calm. However, various possibilities were racing through her mind. Were they burglars? Or was there some trouble related to Michael's work? "Let's call the police," Margaret suggested. Lisa nodded and dialed 911 with trembling hands. Lisa gave the address and explained the situation. The operator responded calmly and informed her that patrol cars would head there immediately. After hanging up the phone, the 3 huddled together in the corner of the hallway. Margaret took out the key to her room. "Let's wait in my room. From there, we can see when the police arrive, and we can also check on your room from the window." When they entered Margaret's room, Lisa expressed her gratitude to her again. "Thank you, Margaret. If you hadn't been here." "Don't mention it. We're like family, aren't we?" Margaret made warm cocoa for Emma. However, no one could take a sip. From the window, they could see the door to their room. On the surface, nothing had changed, but thinking that intruders were inside made them tremble with fear. About 10 minutes later, the sound of sirens echoed. Two patrol cars stopped in front of the apartment building. Four police officers could be seen entering the building. Lisa and the others went out into the hallway to meet the police officers. An older police officer spoke to them as the representative. "You're Mrs. Thompson, right? Please tell us the situation in detail." Lisa explained the situation again, and Margaret also testified about what she had witnessed. The police officers listened to the story with serious expressions. "Can you contact your husband? I've been calling him many times, but there's no answer." "I understand. First, we'll check inside the room. Please wait here." Two police officers headed toward the Thompson family's door. When one turned the doorknob, the door opened. It wasn't locked. The police officers carefully entered the room. "Police. If anyone is there, put your hands up and come out." After a period of silence, one of the police officers came out into the hallway. His expression was serious. "There's no one inside the room, but there's something we'd like you to confirm." Lisa, Emma, and Margaret entered the room with the police officers. The moment they saw the living room scene, everyone gasped. Furniture was overturned, cushions were scattered on the floor, and the TV had fallen over. Books from the bookshelf were scattered on the floor, and papers were spread out on the dining table. It looked as if the entire room had been ransacked in search of something. It was unbelievable that this had been their peaceful home. Emma clung to her mother's arm and began crying. A police officer picked up a piece of paper that had fallen on the floor. "What is this?" It was a handwritten note. In messy writing, it said, "Prepare the money. There's no time. If you care about your family, don't contact the police." Lisa's knees nearly gave way. I don't know what this is about. Has your husband had any troubles at work? Debts, problems with personal relationships, anything like that?" "No, I've never heard of anything like that. Michael is a serious and honest person." However, Emma spoke up with a trembling voice. "Mom." "What, Emma?" "About Dad's phone calls, remember? We talked about it today at the shopping mall, didn't we?" Lisa remembered her daughter's words. The story about Michael talking to someone in a scary voice in the middle of the night. "Mom, it might already be too late." Emma's words had a tone as if she understood everything. A 14-year-old girl was trying to accept a reality that even adults couldn't fully comprehend. The police officers began thoroughly searching every corner of the room and collecting potential evidence. Margaret suggested returning to her room while comforting Lisa and Emma. However, there was something Lisa couldn't understand. Even if Michael was involved in some debt problem, why hadn't he told his family anything? In 16 years of marriage, the couple should have shared everything. Outside, the sun was beginning to set, and the red lights of police vehicles continued flashing around the apartment building. Neighboring residents were also coming to see what was happening with worried expressions. The peaceful Saturday evening had transformed into a nightmarish reality. Lisa held her daughter close while waiting for her husband to return. The police officers continued their investigation inside the room. A veteran investigator named Detective Johnson conducted detailed questioning with Lisa. He had over 30 years of experience, and his calm way of speaking somewhat eased Lisa's tension. "Mrs. Thompson, has there been anything unusual about your husband's recent behavior? Changes in behavior patterns, new friendships, financial changes, any small thing will do." Lisa desperately searched her memory. "Certainly, he's been working overtime more recently. He's been going to work on Saturdays more often too. But I thought it was because the construction industry was busy. Have there been any changes in his salary? Increases or decreases?" "No, there haven't been any particular changes. If anything, it increased a little with overtime pay." Emma spoke up in a small voice. "Detective, I have something that concerns me about Dad." Detective Johnson turned to Emma gently. Tell me anything. Recently, I've seen Dad talking on the phone in the middle of the night. In the living room, with a very tired face, talking to someone. His voice was completely different from usual. What kind of voice was it? It was a scary voice. Like he was being scolded by someone, but at the same time like he was asking someone for something. I don't really understand, but it was completely different from my usual gentle dad. Detective Johnson seemed to judge this as important testimony and took detailed notes. At that moment, another police officer brought something from Michael's study. Detective, please look at this. It was an envelope found from the back of a desk drawer. Inside were multiple threatening letters. The first one was dated 3 months ago, and the content gradually escalated. If you don't return the money, you don't know what might happen to your family. This is the final warning. Keep your promise this time. Think about your cute daughter. Lisa was horrified. Michael had been hiding the existence of these threatening letters for 3 months. Do you have any clues about the amount of debt or the other party? Detective Johnson asked. Lisa shook her head. I had no idea. Michael never said a word about such things. As the investigation progressed further, shocking facts were revealed from Michael's computer. There were access records to online gambling sites, records of large transactions, and detailed records of debts. Your husband appears to have incurred large losses on online casinos, Detective Johnson explained in a heavy tone. Looking at the records, it started about 6 months ago, and the losses gradually increased. And it seems he fell deeper trying to recover those losses. How much money is it? Lisa's voice was trembling. About $500,000 in total. Lisa sank into a chair. $500,000. That was more than their annual income. How could he borrow such a large amount of money, and why didn't Michael consult with his family? Emma said through tears, that's why Dad looked so tired. He kept it all to himself because he didn't want us to worry. Margaret gently embraced Emma's shoulders. Your father was probably desperate trying to protect his family. However, Lisa's feelings were complex. Certainly, her husband might have done it out of concern for his family. But why didn't he consult with her? Why did he carry it all alone when they were married? Questions about their trust relationship began to surface. Around 8 in the evening, there was the sound of the front door opening. Michael had come home. When he saw the police officers standing in the hallway, his face turned pale. Lisa. Emma. Are you all right? Michael tried to rush to his family but was stopped by a police officer. You're Michael Thompson, right? We need to talk. Detective Johnson explained the situation to Michael. The threatening letters, the ransacked room, and the discovered gambling records. When Michael finished listening to everything, he let out a deep sigh. I'm sorry, it's all my responsibility. Michael opened his heavy mouth in front of his family. 6 months ago, when I was stressed at work, a colleague introduced me to online casinos. At first, it was small amounts, just for entertainment. But when I started losing, I kept increasing my bets trying to win it back. Lisa stared at her husband but couldn't say anything. I borrowed money from the company, and when that wasn't enough, I ended up dealing with loan sharks. They were very scary people, and when payments were late, the threats began. Emma cried out to her father through tears. Why didn't you tell us? We're family, aren't we? Tears flowed from Michael's eyes. I didn't want to worry you. And I was ashamed. I was pathetic for doing such a stupid thing. But if we're family, we could have thought of solutions together, Lisa finally spoke. Why did you carry it all alone? At first, I thought I could handle it myself. But I kept sinking deeper, and by the time I realized it, it was too late. Today I met with them too, asking for a little more time. Detective Johnson interrupted. Please tell us details about the people making threats. We need your cooperation to arrest them. Michael answered with a trembling voice. A man named Rick Montana is the boss, and he has 2 subordinates. I think those subordinates were the ones who ransacked the house today. They belong to an organization called Final Solution. The police immediately sprang into action. Based on Michael's testimony, an investigation of Rick Montana and his associates began. Fortunately, this organization had been under surveillance before, and this incident became decisive evidence for their arrest. 2 hours later, there was a call from the police. Rick Montana and his 2 subordinates had been arrested. They would be charged with extortion, breaking and entering, and property damage. It was revealed that they had repeatedly committed similar crimes in the past, and a long prison sentence was expected. However, just because they were arrested didn't mean all of the Thompson family's problems were solved. The enormous debt of $500,000 remained. Dad, what are we going to do now? Emma asked anxiously. Michael looked at his family and answered. I'll file for bankruptcy. And I'll receive treatment for gambling addiction. I have a disease. But I'll definitely get better and make a new start for my family. As Lisa listened to her husband's words, she felt various emotions swirling in her heart. Anger, disappointment, and at the same time, relief. At least there would be no more lies. Now that the truth was clear, they might be able to find a way forward as a family. Late at night, the police investigation ended. They decided to clean up the ransacked room starting tomorrow, and tonight everyone would stay in Margaret's room. Margaret made warm soup for them. The family of 3 felt the importance of truly being together for the first time in a long while. As a family just as they were, without lies or secrets. A week had passed. Lisa had repeatedly thought about the word divorce in her head. Her trust in her husband was greatly shaken, and it felt as if what they had built in 16 years of marriage had crumbled in an instant. However, before making a decision, they needed time to talk as a family. Michael explained the situation to his company and took unpaid leave. While proceeding with bankruptcy procedures with a lawyer, he began participating in a gambling addiction treatment program. Every morning was counseling, and afternoons were group sessions with people who had the same problem. One evening, Lisa made an opportunity to talk quietly with her daughter. Emma sat next to her mother, sitting with her knees drawn up. Emma, Mom is thinking about divorcing Dad. Emma looked up and stared at her mother. Deep thoughtfulness dwelt in her eyes. Can't Mom forgive Dad? It's not that I can't forgive him. But I feel betrayed by someone I trusted. The most important thing for a family is trusting each other, right? Emma was silent for a while, but eventually spoke quietly. But Dad is family too. Those words resonated deeply in Lisa's heart. Dad did wrong things, but his love for us hasn't changed. I can't abandon Dad who is suffering from illness. Lisa was amazed by Emma's mature thinking. Her daughter might have a much bigger heart than her mother. The next day, Lisa suggested receiving family counseling. Michael agreed, and the 3 visited a counselor's office. The counselor, Dr. Ramirez, was a gentle middle-aged woman and a specialist in family therapy. Thompson family, first I want to say that what happened this time is not unusual at all. Gambling addiction is a disease, and with proper treatment, recovery is possible. In the sessions, they honestly discussed what each was feeling. Michael talked about his struggle between his own weakness and love for his family. Lisa spoke about her anger at being betrayed and her complex feelings of still loving her husband. Emma expressed her fear of the family breaking apart because she loved both parents. Family rebuilding takes time, Dr. Ramirez said. But as long as there's love for each other, a way will surely be found. 2 months later, Michael's bankruptcy procedures were completed. They had to give up their house and apartment, but fortunately, through Margaret's introduction, they found a small apartment. It was a modest dwelling with only 3 small rooms, but it was sufficient for the family of 3. Michael continued treatment for gambling addiction while finding a new job. His salary was less than before, but he dedicated himself to working steadily and supporting his family. Lisa also increased her working hours at the library to help support the household. On moving day, Margaret brought homemade apple pie. A new start. I'll come check on you sometimes, so don't hesitate to tell me anything. Lisa almost cried at Margaret's unchanging warmth. Having such a neighbor during such a difficult time was an immeasurable source of emotional support. 3 months later, the Thompson family has begun a new life in their small apartment. Michael continues attending addiction treatment programs twice a week. Family counseling also continues once a month. While financially challenging, the family bond seemed stronger than before. They had learned firsthand the importance of not keeping secrets and discussing everything together. One Sunday afternoon, the 3 were having a picnic in a nearby park. They spread out homemade sandwiches and cookies that Margaret had brought over, sitting on the grass. "Dad, how's the treatment going?" Emma asked. "There are still difficult times, but it's definitely getting better. I can keep going because you're here." Michael's face no longer had the shadows it once did. There was the peace of living honestly. Lisa looked at her husband and daughter and thought, perhaps there's no such thing as a perfect family. But being able to love each other, support each other, and give each other chances to start over, that's what a real family is. As the sunset painted the park golden, the 3 walked home hand in hand. From the window of their small apartment, they could see Margaret waving. Family might not be just about blood relations. It might be the deep connections with people who care for each other and support each other in times of trouble.